I always thought love could conquer anything. Growing up, I believed that as long as two people were committed, they could weather any storm. Amy was the woman I dreamed of, kind-hearted, supportive, and able to see the best in everyone. But over time, my belief in love conquers all was shaken by something I couldn't ignore: the constant stress of struggling financially. It became a shadow that hung over us, a reminder of how I felt I couldn't give her the life she deserved. I wanted to build a stable life, something that could offer Amy security and happiness. But despite my efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was falling short. And with every struggle, I felt less like the partner she needed. My own self-doubt grew until I became convinced that maybe the best way to show my love was to let her go, to give her the chance to find happiness without being tied down by my shortcomings. Breaking up with her felt like the right thing, even though it broke my heart. I told myself that I was doing this for her sake, but as soon as I saw the hurt in her eyes, I felt a hollowness that only grew as time passed. Had I been too focused on my insecurities to see the love we already had? Was I wrong in believing that she'd be better off without me? Those questions lingered, and as the days turned into weeks, I realized I might have overlooked something important. Maybe love wasn't about offering a perfect life. Maybe it was about being there for each other, no matter what. After the breakup, I went through my days on autopilot, convincing myself I'd done the right thing. But then, people around me started sharing their perspectives. Friends, family, even acquaintances. They'd tell me I'd made a mistake, that Amy didn't care about material things as much as I'd assumed. Hearing it from others felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to believe I'd made the choice out of love, but it started to feel like I'd let my own insecurities blind me to her commitment. One close friend finally called me out, saying, "Jake, did Amy ever say she wasn't happy with you?" That question stuck with me, echoing in my mind. No, she hadn't. In fact, she'd always reassured me, always stood by me. I'd let my doubts become bigger than her words, and now I was realizing that maybe I hadn't been protecting her happiness. I'd been protecting myself from my own fears of inadequacy. Those conversations forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Maybe the breakup hadn't been about what Amy needed, but about my own sense of worth. And facing that truth was almost as painful as losing her. After realizing that my own insecurities might have driven me to break things off with Amy, I was left grappling with a deeper issue: my self-worth. I'd always believed that a man's value was tied to his ability to provide, to offer stability and security. Without that, who was I? I found myself replaying every moment we'd shared, wondering why Amy had stayed with me despite my struggles. I started questioning whether I was truly worth loving if I couldn't offer her more. It was a dark place to be in, feeling like I'd failed not just in our relationship, but as a person. I began to think that maybe she'd be happier without me weighing her down. The self-doubt gnawed at me, affecting every area of my life. I'd wake up with this emptiness in my chest, dreading each day as just another reminder of what I couldn't give. I wanted to move forward, to let go, but it felt like I'd lost a part of myself in letting Amy go, and I didn't know how to get it back. Eventually, the weight of regret grew too heavy, and I realized I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I needed closure, or at least some clarity. So, I reached out to Amy, asking if she'd meet me. I didn't know what to expect. Anger, maybe, or worse, indifference. But she agreed, and we met at a small park where we'd often spent our evenings. As we sat together, the words spilled out before I could hold them back. I told her about the doubts that had eaten away at me. My fears of not being enough for her, of not giving her the life she deserved. I tried to explain that I thought letting her go would be better than dragging her down. But as I spoke, I could see the hurt in her eyes, and it dawned on me that I hadn't truly understood her at all. She looked at me, calm yet wounded, and asked a simple question. "Did you ever consider what I wanted?" Her words hit hard, and for the first time, I saw how my own fears had clouded my judgment, how I'd overlooked her loyalty and love. She didn't need me to be perfect. She just wanted me to be there. In that moment, I realized I'd let my own insecurities drive a wedge between us, and there was no taking it back. After our conversation, I was left with a hollow ache that seemed to follow me everywhere. Hearing Amy's side, seeing the pain I'd caused her, it was like looking in a mirror and realizing I didn't recognize the person I'd become. The weight of my choices settled on me, and the regret was overwhelming. Nights became the hardest. I'd lie awake, haunted by memories of our time together, wondering what might have been if I'd trusted in her love instead of letting my insecurities win. I couldn't escape the feeling that I'd lost something irreplaceable. Friends tried to reassure me, but the pain felt too personal, too deep. I found myself withdrawing from everyone, consumed by a heartbreak that wasn't just about losing Amy. It was about realizing how much I'd lost of myself. Every day was a struggle, a reminder that I'd walked away from someone who had been willing to stay, flaws and all. And that knowledge hurt in a way I couldn't put into words. Realizing I couldn't face this alone, I finally opened up to a few close friends and family members about everything I'd been going through. It wasn't easy. I'd kept so much bottled up, ashamed of how I'd handled things with Amy and embarrassed about the choices I'd made. But their reactions surprised me. Rather than judgment, I was met with understanding. My friends shared their own stories of regret, of times when they'd let their pride or fears drive their decisions. Hearing that I wasn't the only one to make mistakes lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. They reminded me that self-worth isn't about material success, but about being honest and vulnerable, even when it's uncomfortable. My family helped me see that what mattered most wasn't how much I could give materially, but how much I was willing to invest emotionally. The conversations were a turning point, a reminder that I wasn't defined by my past mistakes. Their support gave me the strength to believe that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to rebuild what I'd lost with Amy. And more importantly, to rebuild myself. With the support of those around me, I began to feel a sense of strength I hadn't felt in a long time. I realized that healing wouldn't come from looking back and regretting what I'd done, but from taking steps forward and making peace with my past. Slowly, I started focusing on myself, finding ways to rebuild the confidence I'd lost and letting go of the belief that my worth was tied to financial success. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, started exercising, and spent time reflecting on what I truly valued. I wanted to become a person I could be proud of, someone who didn't let insecurity dictate his choices. It was a journey of learning to accept myself as I was, flaws and all. Each small step forward brought a new sense of purpose. I was healing, not by trying to erase the pain, but by learning from it. And in that process, I found a renewed sense of hope, a feeling that I could move forward, whether or not Amy was in my life. I was becoming whole again, and that realization filled me with a quiet strength I hadn't known I was capable of. Months passed, and just when I thought I was starting to find my footing, fate had a surprise in store for me. One chilly afternoon, I decided to treat myself to coffee at a cozy cafe I used to visit with Amy. As I walked in, the warmth of the place wrapped around me, and I was momentarily lost in nostalgia. Then, I saw her. Amy was sitting in the corner, surrounded by books, just as I remembered her. My heart raced as I debated whether to approach her or slip out quietly. I took a deep breath and chose to walk over, my nerves tingling with uncertainty. "Hey, Jake," she said, looking up with a surprised smile that momentarily took my breath away. We began to talk, the awkwardness of our past slowly fading as we fell into an easy rhythm. The hours flew by as we shared stories, laughter, and memories. It felt so natural, as if no time had passed. As we reminisced, she revealed that she had been saving my favorite books, hoping that one day I'd come back to discuss them with her. My heart swelled at the realization that she had thought of me, that she still cared. In that moment, all the fears I had about her moving on faded away. Instead, I was reminded of the deep connection we shared. The moments that had once felt lost were now reawakening something inside me. As we talked and laughed, I felt a spark I hadn't experienced in ages. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring us back together, and all my fears of losing her began to dissolve. With each shared memory, I realized that the connection we once had was still very much alive. I saw in her eyes the same warmth and understanding that had drawn me to her in the first place. Over the next few weeks, we met regularly, revisiting the cafe where it all began. Each meeting deepened our bond, and I found myself falling for her all over again. We talked about our lives, our dreams, and our hopes for the future. She told me about her travels and how she'd grown during our time apart, and I shared my journey of self-discovery and healing. What struck me the most was the realization that our love had never been about the money or success. It had always been about understanding and support, about being there for each other through thick and thin. I could see how both of us had changed and matured, ready to embrace each other without the weight of insecurity clouding our relationship. The laughter and joy we shared reignited something deep within me, a sense of hope and happiness I thought I had lost forever. It became clear that true love isn't about material wealth. It's about cherishing each moment and each other. I vowed to cherish this second chance and never take it for granted again. Just when I thought everything was falling into place, a familiar doubt crept back in. As my relationship with Amy blossomed, I found myself haunted by memories of the past, the reasons we had broken up, my fears of inadequacy, and the nagging thought that I might lose her again. Each time I sensed her pulling away, my heart raced with anxiety, a reminder of the pain I had endured before. One evening, as we sat together in the cafe, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Amy, are you really okay with this? With us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes widened in surprise, and I could see the worry etched on her face. "What do you mean?" she replied, a hint of confusion in her tone. "I just don't want you to feel like you have to settle for me. I know I can't offer you the life you deserve," I confessed, feeling a lump rise in my throat. It was terrifying to expose my vulnerabilities again, but the fear of losing her felt greater than my hesitation to speak up. For a moment, silence hung in the air like a heavy fog. Then she reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "Jake, it's not about what you can give me materially. I'm here because of who you are, not what you have. I never stopped believing in us, and I've been waiting for this chance for so long. Tears filled my eyes as I heard those words. It was as if a weight had been lifted, and in that moment, I realized the truth. True love doesn't measure worth in dollars, but in the depth of connection we share. I vowed then and there to embrace this second chance wholeheartedly, to never let my fears dictate my worth again. As we walked out of the cafe that night hand in hand, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope. The past didn't define us, it was the love we built together that mattered. With renewed determination, I knew I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that we were stronger together.